Just give some more.
Well, hello, and welcome to My Whiskey Den, your favorite public access whiskey review show where craft whiskey is king and part of the Bar Cart Co-op. Thank you very, very much for stopping in tonight. Before we go any further, Mike, I see you squished in with Benji there. What do we usually tell our watchers and our viewers right now?
Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the bell notification to find out when new episodes are coming out. If you're watching us live, please interact with the chat. That's some of the great people there, and comments down below if you watch us later on.
All right. Now, we have someone very, very special on this holiday weekend. Can't believe someone would be generous enough with their time to stop in on Labor Day night, but I can't think of another better way to finish it off because I see 7, 8, I don't know, a whole slew of whiskeys to taste this evening, and they're all from Deerhammer Distilling in Colorado, and we have Lenny Eckstein here. Thank you so much for being with us this evening. We really, really appreciate your presence and your time on this holiday weekend.
Yeah, guys, I'm stoked to be here. I'm not even sure what Labor Day is yet. I was trying to figure that out earlier, but I'm glad to be here.
You're celebrating not being a 7-year-old working in a factory. That's
yeah.
So thank you everyone in the chat for being here. It's good to see you all. What do all of you have in your glass? And I'm going to say we started off with some American single malt batch number 63 at 46% alcohol by volume. Sorry, I kind of lost my voice there. Sorry about that. So that's where we're starting off tonight. How did you come up with the idea? I'm sorry, I'm just by the smell and the nose on this. What's the mash bill on this? I'm sorry, it threw me off and I wanted to know before and I waited till now because I was really anxious. And it's totally out of order. I know that, but I don't care.
Yeah, it's so single malt, so it's all malt barley. But grain bill wise, we're looking at 80% pale two-row malt, and then pretty much an even split of Crystal 45, Crystal 120, and chocolate malt. So those three malts would be considered specialty malt, and they're either roasted or kilned, and they bring out different flavors. So, yeah, that's the grain bill.
It just has a nice bright, like little minty note into it.
Yep.
Like a quarter of the halfway through, and on the palate too, it just was throwing me off amongst everything else, and I really enjoyed it.
That's kind of our goal. Like throwing people off is what we're all about at Deerhammer. So I'm glad we're hitting that mark.
So, what were you doing before you decided to start a distillery? And I'm going to fix my camera here. I don't know what happened there.
What was I doing? So I guess as a profession, I was a graphic designer. I worked for a lot of ad agencies, did a lot of online advertising, and was trying to make an exit from that career. And I was contemplating getting into the world of brewing beer. And while I was working towards that, I kind of came to the realization that American single malt is not that far off from beer, and it's a whole lot more fun to make. And that was the beginning of the path. So somewhere around 2008 it started, and by 2011 we were making American single malt on a direct fire pot still.
Wow.
So why Buena Vista? Because you're not from there, right?
No, I'm not from here. I grew up in Philadelphia, but I've been living in Colorado since around 99. And you know, I don't know. I guess I moved out here for just the adventure of it all, which is a little cliche, but there's a lot of fun stuff out here, and it's fun to check everything out. And I spent my time, you know, at a typical desk job, and every weekend I would explore around. And I got really into whitewater kayaking in my early 20s, and you know, this town, Buena Vista, is more or less the headwaters of the Arkansas River. Really good whitewater kayaking. So that was always a bit of a draw. And when it came to this notion of starting up a distillery to whatever scale or success it might have become, the thought was I could certainly do it in Denver or anywhere. Might as well do it where I most want to be. And that's Buena Vista. So that's where I am.
So are you doing the graphic design for Deerhammer, or do you have somebody else do it?
I try not to anymore, but I do end up doing a lot of it. At times, yeah, I like our most recent labels. I worked with another guy. I feel like I kind of get to do more of the like creative director role now, where I can find other designers that have skill sets that I might not, or whatever their skill set is. If I don't have time to do it, I can kind of push them in that direction. So I get to assume that role, which I do really enjoy. But I still end up doing a lot of design work. So it's all right. Yeah, I like doing it. I feel like everybody brings something to the world of running a small distillery or owning a small distillery. And I still kind of maintain that being either like a plumber or specifically like a steam boiler mechanic or whatever that is. I don't even know what that is because I can't find the person that fixes the steam boiler. That's the best thing to bring to a distillery if you have it. But I brought design.
Every distiller's bane.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, what was your distilling experience coming into Deerhammer? Had you been doing some home distilling at first, or what?
For sure. Yeah. I encourage everyone to. I guess it's not legal, but that's stupid. It's distilling is super fun, and I think that anyone who doesn't distill before they go jump into owning a distillery is nuts.
Right.
But I would say before that, I mean, brewing beer is so much of the process, like understanding grain, fermentation, just flavors, nuance. Doing that for 10 to 15 years prior to having my mind blown that that's most of making whiskey, and then you just kind of boil it and collect steam into liquid again, and there you got whiskey. I was doing that for a long time, and like I said, I thought about doing that as a career, but I just didn't do it. So yeah, I did home distill for a while, and it's awesome. I mean, when someone told me when I was assisting at a brewery that you could take a 15-gallon keg and pull the spear out and clamp a column on top and make whiskey and just put it on a turkey fryer and boil it. Everybody can do that. It's awesome. Yeah.
So what was your first run you ever did? How did that turn out?
So my very first run turned out terrible. I was so I had the whole like mashing and fermenting part down. Mm-hmm. What I didn't have down was, well, in this case in particular, this is a long story. I'm trying to figure out how to shorten it. So this is kind of weird. We were living in Breckenridge at the time, this mountain town in Colorado, and I blew out my ACL, and I was recovering not very far in, maybe like 3 weeks after surgery. So I threw this party kind of for myself, and I called it Knee Fest, and I had tons of friends over, and we had beer, and that was my first distillation that day. And my hydrometer, for measuring, or alcoholometer for measuring what's coming off the still, I dropped it, and I didn't have another one.
Oh no!
And I wasn't well versed enough in like shaking up a jar and seeing how many, how dense the bubbles were. So I was so concerned with what the fact that what I might make could potentially get everyone sick or worse. So I didn't know where to make the cut. And what I ultimately made the cut on, and I never knew the alcohol, was pretty much all tails because I was afraid to take the higher stuff. And I remember a friend of mine took a sip and he looked at me like kind of puzzled. And he was like, "This tastes like fish." And he wasn't wrong. It kind of had this weird fishy taste. So that was the first thing. It was awful. But I feel like I went uphill pretty quick. What's that?
What size still were you doing that off of?
It was a 15-gallon still based off a 15-gallon keg. So, yeah, I mean, the run goes pretty quick and the cuts go fast. It's pretty hard distilling on that small of a scale. And our first still at 150 gallons is a lot easier to run.
Yeah, the bigger stills, the easier those cuts are to discern. You got a little bit of time in there, too. You not have to be so quick, Johnny on the gun, to make that cut.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what type of stills do you guys have at the distillery now?
Well, I'm super big into pot stills, and like by that I mean like the most rudimentary pot stills. No plates, no columns whatsoever. Just the old school like pot, head, line arm, condenser. So we have our stripping still is a 650 gallon Trident still, pretty squat head, And then our spirit still is 250 gallon, also a squat head copper pot still made by American Beverage Equipment out in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Okay.
So we run everything pot distillation, two distillations, and very batch oriented in the sense that pretty much everything that goes in from the grain measurement where we mill it, through the mash, the ferment, the first distillation, the second distillation, the final yield is roughly 50 gallons. So every batch is a barrel.
Nice. It doesn't always work out that way. That's pretty good.
No,
Pretty good thinking
especially
before.
someone who sucks at math. It worked out pretty well. I don't know how that happened, but I'm happy about it.
Excuse me. Well, I was going to say since we do have a couple samples to go through this evening, I'm going to jump off of the American single malt, and I think maybe we should go to the single barrel next, just to see, because who doesn't want a side by side besides having a dump glass?
We're good with that.
Give me a little second here.
Drinking more of that. Yeah.
So you started pretty early as far as some of the distilleries go, especially like around the 2010, 2011 time, if you're actually getting the stuff out then. What were some of the hoops you had to jump through back then just to kind of get it going? Because I know a lot of times people around that time were a little more trailblazers, making some of the laws and regulations work or adjust to how it can work in the system. Oh my God, that is so coolly darker. Sorry.
Yeah, no, I'll
Just gonna mention it.
So I like to think of Deerhammer as like kind of slotting into what I consider the second generation of Colorado craft distillers. The real trailblazers, in my opinion, were like Stranahan's, Peach Street, Montagna. The ones who actually did have to either change laws or, really knock down walls. I'm not going to say we didn't have adversity. I just didn't know any better. I just, we looked around and saw that other folks were doing it and thought certainly we can too. I think the state's not hard in a sense. The federal side's not hard, but the local part, the like town planners and fire inspectors, that part can be brutal. It was then, it can be now. We had a lot of drama with our town planner and fire inspector. I'd like to think that we played a part in both of them getting fired. I lost a lot of sleep dealing with their shenanigans, and we made it through. A lot of time once you start and it's going, and like I know some folks are dealing with some nonsense right now in the industry. I don't know. You just got to I feel like you got to look at it as like the momentum's not stopping. We're going to steamroll you. We had a meeting so Deerhammer, when we opened our doors, or we started distilling at the end of 2010, it was so small, and I was making like maybe 2 or 3 barrels a month. And, pretty quickly we realized that my crappy napkin math wasn't going to pan out. So my wife, Amy, who's played a major role in, fixing everything I mess up, she noticed that it just wasn't going to work. So we had to scale up, and scaling up meant, bringing in a big steam boiler and bringing in a much bigger still, more fermenters, a big mill, a silo, so we can buy grain, at a lower price per pound. And I guess where I'm going with this is when we decided to do this, we had one town planner who looked at our plan, I guess, like that we're going to put a silo up and put all these little buildings in on our property. And she gave us a thumbs up and said, yeah, no problem, guys, go for it. What she didn't give us, or we didn't know to get, was the building permit. And in that span of time, a new town planner came on and said, no chance, you're not putting up this silo. And fast forward, after meetings and being shot down and telling them, like, we're doing this anyway, we already bought the equipment. We ended up in a meeting with the town meeting. And we brought in this consultant who is the safety consultant for, I can't remember the name of his company, Anfield, I think, but they consult with Coors and massive companies all over the place on general safe dealings and grain handling and like mitigating explosions. We conference called him into this meeting, and some of the town trustees were asking questions, and one of the questions was like, have you ever seen this before? And he was like, absolutely not. I've never seen such concern over putting up a silo to hold malted barley. Like, no, this is not going to blow up your town. So
I don't mean to laugh, but it is like part of it is just that's stupid. It's just.
It is. I mean, that was a long-winded way of saying, like, yeah, we had some challenges, and I hope we made it easier for some other folks. Whenever someone reaches out, to ask questions or needs help, I'm definitely there for them, because we had a lot of folks that were there for us. So, yeah, it can be challenging, but it's worth it.
I love the spiciness that comes out of the single barrel version of it. Like, it's everything else, but then like a little bit of nice little peppery heat, not overwhelming, but like just enough. And this has a really long finish on it. I'm really enjoying this one quite a bit.
I feel like the long finish on our offerings is it's kind of cheating, because if you use a pot still, that's what happens, I find. And that's not to knock anyone who doesn't, but I'm a big advocate of pot still distillation.
No, you got some fantastic oils in the single barrel, and they really they hold to the palate, and they carry that finish long and through.
Yeah, I'm trying to think which single barrel I poached a sample of, because we had a few barrels. Bluegrass. That's what I was thinking. Yeah, those guys picked. They picked 3. That's the first one they picked. They'll get the rest as they go through it. But yeah, that was my favorite barrel we've had sitting around for a while. So yeah, I pulled a few off there. They won't mind. Bluegrass Lounge is a great spot for anyone who's they're right near Talnua, in Arvada, Talnua Distillery. Great bourbon bar for anyone who's after that.
You mentioned I think it's like a jalapeno honey. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, it's nice. So you mentioned earlier when you all were starting out your production, you're putting down 2 to 3 barrels a month. What are you currently producing at the moment?
Oh, at the moment, nothing. We stopped production in the summer.
Okay.
So I feel like, on the average year, we fill between 200 and 250 barrels. And we only produce between September and around end of April, beginning of May.
Right.
We could definitely make a lot more. I think our system is such that, if we worked around the clock, we could easily double that. Or just made whiskey in the summer. It's a little challenging because it's hot out and we're all trying to get on the river. So it's hard to goof off and make whiskey. But
that's what I was going to ask, if it was atmospheric or if it was or if it was vacation that was causing it.
I mean, it's definitely a little challenging with the heat. I mean, we're not in the hottest area, but it gets pretty warm. So to cool down all the glycol to chill down to fermentation temperatures when it's running through our chiller, it's harder in the summer. It's less efficient. So we look at it and think I don't want to say we're the most environmentally conscious distillery out there, but if we can do things to save energy, save water, and really hit our goals, we found that works. So did you ask me how many barrels we make? Is that, I feel like I answered that.
Yeah, that's what I was, typically how many barrels a week would you normally put down production wise current? Yeah,
I mean, each batch is a barrel. So when we're cranking away, 4 to 5.
Okay.
4, I guess.
Nice.
And yeah, I mean, we're small, no question about it. I guess we're at a point where we certainly could grow. We have room. We have our distillery that's pretty sardine can packed in. If anybody's been there, it's really dense. But then our rack house is off site, and we could expand our footprint here. We have another chunk of land, just under an acre across the highway. But we like our scale. It's such that we get to make the whiskey we want. We don't have to force it out when it's not where we want it to be. We can say no to opportunities that sound great from a marketing perspective. For brand awareness, I had something cross my path that sounds great, but it means, pulling 6 or so barrels that I really am not quite ready to pull yet. I don't want to do that. So I'd rather just, maintain and turn out what we like. Stay small.
Yeah.
Don't you wish you could talk to those people and be like, we'll do that in 6 months or a year when the barrels get to where they should be, and we'll all be happy at that point.
Yeah, I know. There is that. But then on the flip side, like we sell like almost everything we make in Colorado. And I really do see a big future in either direct to consumer, which hopefully materializes. But if not that, even like the manners of dealing with online ordering, that we don't fulfill that because that kind of defies the 3-tier system, and we can't. But we can still work within the 3-tier system and leave it on the retailers who are willing to ship to the consumer. So I guess that, again, a long way of saying we're pretty happy with where we're at, how much we make, and I don't know, just giving to the people who care, I guess.
Yeah.
So you either had or you still have going on. You guys had a shipping special.
Yeah.
Is that you're driving it, but the retailers are absorbing that, or how do they? Because I know that can't be get them to follow along.
No, yeah. I'll spare you the boring tech part, and I don't quite understand it either. That's why I keep making mistakes on it. Yeah, I was trying to set up like a discount code, so it was like $5 flat rate shipping this month, but I think it just everybody who orders gets that. And no, that comes off my profits. I got to figure that out someday. But yeah, if you guys want a discount code, let me know what it should be. I'll try to make it.
I think we can handle that. Oh.
So with curious, the atmosphere there in Colorado, on the fermentation side, how are you guys tackling that? What kind of fermentation times are you running? And then I'd love to dig in as far as like yeast. What kind of a yeast program you got going there?
Right. So I'll jump around a bit. Fermentation time. We set like certain rules for ourselves that, we're like, we do this and we don't go any less than this, but it could always be more, be it maturation or whatever. And that's the case with fermentation. For all of our fermentation, we say, okay, minimum 4 days fermentation. And to us, we do an open fermentation. Something that I'm kind of weird about, I don't know why, but I have this attraction to natural, like ambient temp fermentation, in the sense that we don't glycol jacket our fermenters. And while I love controlling certain things, I like the old school and the challenge of saying, okay, well, what's the healthy pitching temp and what's it going to rise to? And what kind of ester development are we going to see when it gets into the 80s and low 90s? And, a lot of things are formed. Where do we cut it off? What happens when we let full attenuation happen after 2 days? So we're really sitting on the most amount of alcohol we could ever make, which is, right around 8.5% based on, our mash and the water addition and our original gravity. But then how many days do we let the native flora settle in, which is primarily, whatever strain of lactobacillus is going to be predominant in this mountain valley. So fermentation time, we stick to minimum 4 days, but I said we weren't making anything now, to lie. We just made, we're working through about 7 barrels of rum, which we're not really a rum distillery, but I've come to really love rum. So I don't know. Well, why not? We use it in cocktails a lot, and we're setting down some barrels. We're doing a lot of fun backset experiments with dunder experiments. Using we have a single malt dunder pit going that's being added to the rum that's 6 months old. All kinds of crazy stuff. But the rum, we'll let that sit in the fermenter for 7+ days. So we'll do different things there. You asked me about yeast. I love that question, but also it's tricky to answer because I don't always, a lot of times I'll not toe the line the way a lot of folks would on the marketing side of things. And that's not to diminish the importance of yeast by any means. I mean, it's massively important. But we've tried a lot of yeast, and that sounds weird to say, tried a lot of yeast. We've fermented with many strains of yeast. And I want to say minimum 15 that we've tried and really evaluated. Anything from, a Belgian quad, a lot of beer yeast, Belgian quad, Saison, Whitbread, just general Cal Ale yeast. And on the distilling side, I hate to say distiller's yeast because I have a little bit of a problem with that term. I don't know what the difference is between. There is no difference between distiller's yeast and brewer's yeast. They all, they do the same thing. Some yeast have a propensity to work better at higher alcohol. Some form esters more so than others. Some do neat things at warmer temperature and stay neutral at lower temperature. Some flocculate more. That long way of saying we tried a lot of stuff. We've done a lot of stuff with what would be referred to as a traditional bourbon yeast. That I think that's a weird descriptor, but the company that provides it won't specify the distillery that it came from, but says pick one of the biggest bourbon distillers, and that's probably it. We tried that for years, and it worked great. It's if they like cite what these yeasts do well. This one, I believe it's USW6 from Fermentis. It's known, or as they say, to accentuate some of the spicier notes in corn and rye. What I found it did and does, and you're tasting it in a lot of this stuff, is it really punched up the, I would say like the dark chocolate and coffee notes in the specialty malt.
Right.
But 2.5 years ago, we switched to a different yeast strain. We tried 2 or 3 different ones at this time. I was at one of the industry events, and I think it was one of the guys from Smooth Ambler, I think, was presenting and showing their findings on based on what yeast they used after running through a mass spectrometer, like what flavors they were getting and how they could prove it. And I came back and thought, like, you know what, I want to do this, but I don't want to run it through gas chromatograph mass spectrometer. I just want to taste it. And I don't know. I mean, their way might be better for determining the end result, but it's just, you got to love the process. And I'm tired of computers, so I don't want to run it through a computer. So we tried all these different. I was like, I called the yeast companies, like, give me something that forms lots of esters, because I want to see what those esters do in a few years after sitting in the barrel. What happens with all of that. And we ended up, I think, what was it? We've got a few examples over there written on the barrel. I can't remember. They're all letters and numbers. But we settled on M1, which is a traditional malt strain used in Scotland, which we were kind of resistant to because we do so much that's like, we hang our hat on American single malt. And I love jumping back and forth. So I was very proud of saying, hey, we're making American single malt, but we use bourbon yeast and we go into charred new oak. But when it came down to it, comparing the new make back to back, I did like the M1 yeast better than the USW6. I think the other one was like D52. Can't remember. All very scientific. They should give them more fanciful names, I think. But it was. I found the M1 yeast to be very similar to the other one, but like, maybe like 5% better, 3% better. So if it's better, then why not try it? And what I found, fast forward a couple years, is that it lends this really cool confectionery note to it, to the finished product, which I don't know if you have any of that. Like, I mean, all of our offerings that are like 2 years old now, we're not really bottling that quite yet, but it's fun to taste it. And it reminds me of, I've used this descriptor. It's kind of a weird one, but like that, if you think about those like cheap ghetto oatmeal cookies that have the white frosting on them,
Right.
packs like 100. It reminds me of that white frosting kind of, and maybe a little bit of like the raisiny notes. So, that's our deal with yeast.
I like that.
Yeah. No, I just love hearing. And for me, like through this whole process we've been doing this show and just personal things I've done, I love hearing everybody's different philosophy and different take on it, because it's like I don't see that there's a right or wrong way. There's just different ways. You're doing what you're doing. You're getting, the profile that you want to get from it, and it's not necessarily that this is the right way and this is the only way to do it, but there's different takes to it. And so I love hearing what everybody's different philosophy and take is and their approach on that. So and like I feel like I jump around on like talking about yeast. Like I on one hand, like I don't want to. I think there's a lot. I always like to talk about the impactful things in whiskey making, and certainly yeast is one of them. But it's by no means the only one. There's obviously all these other things. Right. And if we look at everything, yeast is not the most impactful thing at Deerhammer. I would say
the grain selection and the grain selection really is. Everything matters, but the grain selection is our what's towing the most. But with that, something I've really been geeked out about lately is there's not a lot being done with Brettanomyces like in fermentation for whiskey. I'm sure there's some Brettanomyces that finds its way in, but 100% pitch of like Brett B or Brett C or any of the mixed culture strains. So we've got a brewery out in Winter Park that's working on propagating us a big pitch of Brettanomyces that we're going to hopefully, inoculate some single malt with and see how different it is. And I have a feeling it's going to be a lot different.
Yep. I imagine your funk level is going to really be ratcheting up a little bit on that. So
I hope so.
Could be
You're
just
just- yeah.
Yeah.
Kevin's out there respects the fact that Lenny's bold enough to try about anything to make whiskey.
I think I get off easy on that one, though. That's what happens when you only make 200 barrels a year. I mean, you can be as bold as you want. You don't have to sell it across the world.
Well, those are the things we like, where you're almost trying to make a mark with what you're doing. So I'm going to be honest. I set that one aside. I'm moving on to the Progeny series.
Oh, yeah.
This one is finished in ex-mead casks, 2 years heavy toast, and then a number 2 char for a year or two in Redstone meadery barrels. So
Yeah. So I sent you guys this one because I'm still trying to get my head around it. But this one should have already been on the shelf. I kind of screwed it up. Our Progeny series is supposed to come out every fall, every September, but it's still in the barrel. I'm just trying to decide if I want to release it or not.
I have to tell you, when this showed up, I've got this. Well, I'll have one weird kink that I'll talk about. But when someone has a bottle that's handwritten and
Hold
it
on here. Hold on.
it's tapered posted out, I'm all in, 100%.
Right.
I don't care what's in
Go
it.
again, Mike.
Yeah,
Yeah, that does.
yeah. Every time that's happened, I'm like, oh yeah, I get goosebumps. Like, this is going to be good. I don't care.
Yeah. This one's so aside from like the actual liquid itself, what I love about it conceptually is there's a lot of honey barrel finishes in the sense of actual honey went into a barrel and they pull the honey out of the barrel and they put the whiskey back in the barrel and they're delicious, but I just don't want sugar to that extent in my whiskey. It's like, I love an old fashioned, but if I want it, I'll put some bitters in there and call it good. And I like even though it's not traditional to mature in a honey wine barrel, which mead is honey wine, it feels more traditional to me. And it goes back to, again, you got to do what feels right. I don't know. I've always loved the concept of mead. Vikings drink it or something. And then going extra long, like a typical finish. I don't know, like a finish in sherry or something, you'll see like 3 months, 6 months. But to go like 2 years in the like charred new oak, and then more than 2 years next mead at this point, I think it's kind of goofy.
Mm-hmm. No, I think I actually like how it does it, because like the mead it almost seems like it flattened it out, like some of the notes, but then after you get like a little bit more into it and get like that second or third breath in, you start getting this neat like light baked pastry note coming through out of it. Well, fruit baked pastry, but
Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, that mead, for me, it kind of rounds the notes off a little bit and comes in with it just adds a lot of richness and depth on the back end of this. It's really nice.
Isn't it a bummer though, from a marketing perspective, that the term for fermented honey wine is mead? That sounds like meat. Like,
Right.
One of my distributor reps, when I told him about it, he was like, "You put it in a meat barrel?" I was like, "No, dude. Who put it in a meat barrel? What is a meat barrel?" There's no
That's not a bad idea, though.
Yeah.
Is it bacon? Because then I'm in.
I did try some Pachuga this week, so talk about meat and spirits.
Okay. Wow. This is like, I think, what is the ABV on this? Because this is deceptively smooth and easy to drink right now.
It's probably 110.
Yeah.
101.
101.
Mm. Wow.
At 101 proof, that is dangerous.
It has a ton of wow. Very nicely layered, sir. Put together a lot of different flavors going on. A lot of times we'll be happy. Sounds dumb if someone has 4 or 6 flavors and something that's good. There's tons of different flavors throughout the journey, and it's, like Ben said, really nicely rounded. And a nice finish again. Wow.
I'd like to see more folks doing like a mead or honey wine barrel finish. I don't know too many others. The only other one I know is Alan Bishop at Spirits of French Lake. So someday I think, Deerhammer and Alan have to have a mead barrel finish chug off or something.
I want to watch.
Right?
I can facilitate this.
More teams.
Mm. So let's see here. I'm gonna bring this back. Sorry.
Yeah, but it's almost like toast.
Like a little cinnamon toast?
No.
Mm.
There's a graininess that's coming out, and I'm trying to figure out what it is. I like it. I like this a lot.
Once again, you think the first little bit of it is like a lot of like a little bit bolder flavors, and then the spice pops, but it just like rounds off like right before it gets like, I don't want to say too much because it's a little bit before that, but there is this, it's just another wave of flavors, and it's strong. That's what I'm liking about this. The flavors are strong, and the waves I'm getting on this.
Okay, what's hitting me? All right, like homemade granola. Like at the end, it's like the flavor of homemade granola. And I mean, like someone that knows what they're doing that makes it. That's what that flavor is. Get the brown sugar and the oats and everything coming out. It's really, I like that a lot. More fat guy tasting it.
Yeah, I think I'm gonna try to, if I can get the label together. I'm shooting for January to drop this one, but I did want to give it to you guys just for some input. So thank you.
It's fun.
I feel like the mead actually accents some of the chocolate malt that's in there.
Yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Yeah, Tim, that's true. More fat guy tasting those. That's because they're universal, Tim. They crosses borders. All right. So what are some of the other exciting things you have coming out for later this year?
It's a good question. So whenever we got that question, Progeny series was always the answer, but we just dealt with that one. That was kind of our like, well, what's next? Because we always have a new one every year. I guess like future Progeny series releases, and it's not this year, it's next year and the year after and the year after. We've got there. It's all collaborations with other Colorado makers. So the one we just tried is a collaboration with Boulder-based Redstone Meadery. We've got another one that works with Carboy Winery. That's got a few wineries around Colorado now. We've got another one with High Alpine Brewing, and I'm trying to find a Colorado distillery to partner with for another one. Got some ideas. There's a few out here. So. What else? Let's see. We've got our port cask finish, which you guys have a sample of. What's interesting about that to me is that so we had 10 port barrels, primarily ex-Ruby and ex-Tawny, that we put our minimum 2-year American single malt in and let sit for another 2 years. And then I tried to put the right blend together. So we had 10 barrels, and I had a blend of 4 barrels and a blend of 7 barrels. In the end, I realized all 10 barrels beat out every other blend I put together. So we decided to vat all 10 barrels together into a big tank and then spread them all back out into the barrels again. So in a sense, the upside of that is it makes my life easier because when we pull, let's say 3 of those for a bottling, well, then when it's time to bottle more, I know what to do. It's there, but it's actually 6 months older, and then it's a year older. So what I find exciting about our port cask finish is that every edition that comes out is older and older in the port barrels. So it's 2 months in heavy toast, light char, but then 2 years, 3 years, 4 years next port. So that's a neat one. And I think it's also pretty style defying in the sense that it spends so much time in those port barrels. But I think that the base American single malt can hold up to that fruit.
On the nose, I've only gotten that far, and you can tell that there is some both types of port in here. That's really neat. Oh, rich butter cookie. Oh man, I knew I would be excited about this one. So, and it has a nice little pink. Wow. Yeah. The 2 different port. Wow. That's neat. Sorry, Ben. You're Mr. Descriptor. I'm going to let you go because I don't really have words at the moment. I got to take a second with this one. I might have to set this one aside.
Give me a second. Hold on.
You can make noises.
I was trying not to. That was part of the problem.
Yeah, we typically try not to let Patrick make noises. Could get us into trouble.
That's good.
All right, there's a really cool note coming off in this that almost puts me in the mind of aquavit a little bit. Slightly herbal. That's just coming right off, just slightly on the top in there that caught my attention. I don't normally expect out of a port finish, and I find that really fun. There's some classic port notes, your dark fruits, a little chocolate, a little bit of nuttiness to it. Yeah, that's really pretty.
You even get a nice, just
A little bit of a toffee and walnut kind of note going on there.
Yeah, with the
Cherry.
I was
Like
gonna
a
say cherry on the nose. Yeah.
But I'm still getting to that almost a slight hit of like, I won't say juniper, but like juniper berry, but it reminds me almost of either a slight hint of a gin with a little citrus or an aquavit, even tiny hit of anise. It's funny, it's weird, but it just catch a little bit of whiff of that.
Super tangent, but you just reminded me with regards to new things or things coming up. I don't know if we'll ever release it, but we've got a barrel of 7-year-old barrel-aged gin and I just checked the proof the other day. It's 140 proof, pretty robust. But if anybody's ever out here and you want something absolutely bonkers, we'll go sip a straw out of that one.
Sounds like something would be great for probably making some cocktails with too. I would imagine.
Yeah.
What kind of? I'm curious. What kind of notes are you getting off of that gin?
I mean, like melt your face off notes at 70% alcohol. It's I mean, it's kind of hard to describe. It's super outrageous. It's definitely it reminds me of like an Amaro. It's it's got there's definitely juniper in there. It's got a lot of juniper, a ton of cinnamon. Interestingly, it's actually in a very old Fitzgerald barrel. So it's kind of just sitting there in this what's probably a pretty neutral barrel at this point. It's just tons of weird herbal spices, mint, and just like kind of a neat candy component to it.
Nice.
I'll send you some next time.
Oh yeah, no, because I was at Allen's a few weeks ago, shadowing him for a week, and we were going through some stuff, checking some barrels, and we found a old Tom that he'd put in a barrel 5 years ago.
Oh, nice.
Little samples off that. It was probably hitting in that 140 range. and it was just intense perfume at first, and then when that faded off, it was just this intense lemon note, and then added water, and that lemon turned completely to lime, and it was it was fantastic.
See, apparently we need to have a barrel-aged gin chug off as well. That's old barrel-aged gin.
Oh. All right, I haven't started my dump glass, but I am enjoying the first 4 I have set across in front of me. Right
Already have. We always do a blend at the end of the night of all the things that we've had.
Yeah, we that's another thing too. We're never going to put it out as far as I know, but we've got an infinity barrel that consists of this massive amount of bottles that one of our guys just started stockpiling. And then we realized, like, this is stupid. What are we going to do with all this whiskey in a bottle from years ago? So we dumped it all in the barrel. And, that's another neat one. I don't know if it's ever coming up, but we've got a lot of visit the distillery only and come to the rack house tastings, I guess.
Yeah.
Those are the most
I've got
fun.
another trip to Colorado coming.
Yeah.
Those would make the experience that much better. Kevin was just saying it's almost like a raspberry chocolate. I could see that.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally get that. That's a big one.
All right, we got a couple other ones here. Wait, that's the X-Mead. Sorry, we already did that one. Do we want to do the rye or the 4-grain next? We have another one too.
Well, what, the hickory corn?
Oh, wait.
Is that the other one?
Yeah, that's the other one.
I don't know. What would you prefer? What would you prefer, Lenny? Hickory smoked corn or rye next?
I mean, I guess rye. I was just telling you guys I just blended a new batch. You guys have batch 3. This is batch 4. Bob for your mom.
Your mom.
I don't know. I mentioned this earlier. Like, part of the, aspect of moving forward and deciding we're gonna do everything to make better whiskey every day is that every batch is probably going to be better. Like, I'm not gonna put out a batch that, back to back I didn't like better than the last batch. And while batch 3 was my favorite, it just got kicked off the pedestal in favor of batch 4, which I'm drinking. You guys have batch 3. It's good. It's just not this good.
I think he just taunted us a little bit. That's a good thing to do. Be like, hey, this next thing we have out is even better than what we had before.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess just like a little bit about the rye. Both rye, bourbon, corn whiskey, all those things that came later. We started out and we still make. We started out as a single malt distillery. We make more than half of our production is dedicated to American single malt, but I love making everything else. And our rye, it's approached the same way as everything, which is to say what's great out there, what opportunities are out there. And that's really why I want to start Deerhammer, because of the opportunities to do things differently. So in the case of this rye, you guys have tasted tons of ryes that have come out of Indiana, and there's tons of other great ryes that have come out of Kentucky and everywhere now. There's a lot of cool stuff. This one we tried to make remarkably different. It's grain bill wise, it's 70% rye. The specific rye strain is Elbon rye. It's a little bit different than a lot of other ryes. It does really well in kind of dry, sandy soil, which we have out here. So I like the idea of using a rye that is grown in Colorado and does well in Colorado. So 70% Elbon rye, 20% oats, and the remainder is specialty malt, so roasted in kilns barley. Same barrel profile as everything. Heavy toast, number 2 char. And God, I can't remember for batch 3, but this batch that I'm holding, batch 4, is a blend of 3, 4, and 5-year-old rye barrels.
That's
It is a little bit different on the nose. I'll give you that.
There's a pastry I'm trying to think of.
Mhm.
You can speak up, Mike. It's not like you're on.
Child secret. No, there's a pastry that I'm getting on the nose, and I'm trying to figure out what it is. More fat guy notes.
I'm just getting this nice little bit of. I can't tell if it's a mint or a spearmint.
Yeah,
Almost like it's like right on the top of. I'm trying to figure out, like Mike said, something cooked, but it's like almost. For me, it's weird. Like it's almost like I'm getting like an image in my brain. I'm getting like a shepherd's pie with like a little bit of mint on it. I don't know why, but that's where it's going for me right now.
Yeah, I get a lot of biscuity qualities from it. Again, I'm on a different batch than you guys, but I think some of that's a specialty malt kicking in. Some of it's the bacon spice notes from the toasted barrel.
Mm.
Definitely
A little
some.
bit of the spearmint note.
Yeah,
That I was talking about there is it's a little bit muted, but for me, what's interesting is I'm getting the oats off the nose a little bit. That's kind of carrying through with the rye there.
Yeah, I get that.
yeah, and with oats, like the easy descriptor with oats I found when they're like more dominant is like it tastes like Honey Nut Cheerios. So that's like a sprinkle of that component.
I'm trying to think what it is.
Oh, this is really interesting. It's taking some fun turns along the palate.
Yeah. Pastry when it has the hard sugary glaze over the top of it, whatever that's called. All I know is it's just early diabetes, but it reminds me of that with a almond extract kind of.
That's a good call. The almond note, yeah. See that?
I was gonna say, yeah, on the nose, it's like an almond flour kind of note going on there.
A big part of me wants to, on our next single barrel pick of rye, do a side sticker and call it pre-diabetes, but I feel like that would
Put a picture of a young Wilford Brimley on it.
Yeah.
Right. I did see his doppelganger when I was at Taunua. I had to do a double take. I'm like, wait, I didn't think he was still alive, but he was there. No, this isn't near like we've had a few ryes that are like straight diabetes sweet, Koval being one of them.
Yeah.
This for me, it's not in that kind of sweetness territory, but I actually like the graininess that like it's got that what I love about classic craft, that grain forward profile that's coming out in this.
The
It's
oats
not
are
dominated by the
actually.
barrel necessarily. It's just got there's a lovely interplay between some of the grains and what's going on here.
I
I'm
get
enjoying how the notes and the rye are coming together on the tail end with a really nice finish.
Almost a little bit of a Meyer lemon note going on in there too.
Mm-hmm. And Kevin said something with like lemon squares or something. I'm like, there's a little bit of that. Like, maybe not as sharp in my mind for the lemon, but yeah.
You could definitely get the lemon with water.
Oh, speaking of water, I'm gonna be right back. I'm gonna go grab some. I
Hydrate back.
know I poured some, but I figure I'm gonna get some. So hold on.
So is there a spirit that you want to make but you can't?
Man, that's a good question. I wouldn't say a spirit that I want to make that I can't. I would say, I was talking about our fire inspector earlier, and at some point, a ways through it between our fire inspector and the insurance industry, we had to decommission our direct fire pot still in favor of the more favorable steam heated pot stills, or stills in general. What I want to make is more direct fire offerings, whiskey in particular. I mentioned that we're making rum now, and if I can hustle, I'd really like to set up our old 150-gallon pot still in the back of the rack house where no fire inspectors visiting, and just camp out for the night and make stuff that way. I think that, you know, I don't know. I feel like it is a bummer that, you know, we can't do direct fire distillation, and most distilleries in this country can't, while in some other countries they're actually switching away from steam to direct fire,
Right.
because, you know, it just allows for that Maillard reaction and kettle caramelization and just general badassery. So that's what I want to do. I want to get back to like making more direct fire American single malt in the backyard. See what happens. What else? I don't know. I mean, I think there's a lot more experimentation that I'd like to do. I'd like to do more with American single malt. I like boundaries a lot. Like, you know, some folks listening, watching might be aware of this, but American single malt isn't a category yet. I think it's getting really close, and I think by 2022, the government will officially, categorically, you know, write into the beverage alcohol manual and beyond that says we now have this category. And I think there's going to be a lot of constraints within it, which I'm okay with all of them. In fact, I wouldn't mind a few more constraints than what it sounds like is going to happen. But I like to look at those constraints and play within them. And I've heard some dialogue and conversation about how, you know, bourbon is so restrictive, and it's such a bummer that it got legislated that way. And I couldn't disagree more. I mean, obviously it is restrictive, but there's so much room. If one can't find room to play within that category and experiment and defy the style, then they suck at experimentation. And I want to experiment more, but there's not always room for, I guess there is room. I mean, we make X amount of batches per year. So I have to look at every batch I chisel away for sake of experimentation means we have potential to run out of whatever we should actually be making and selling. But I'd love to experiment more. If nothing mattered, I'd make every single batch different.
So I'm curious because I have heard just this past week, I think they are getting very close. Well, with the Single Malt Spirit Association or whatever it is, you're kind of getting their definition of what they want to see, how it defined. How exactly would you like to see it defined?
Well, I had a good friend who I hold in incredibly high regard, who's done a lot in the distilling industry. He was out here recently. I hadn't seen him in a while, and his stance on it, and this is a roundabout way. I'm not answering a question quite directly, but his stance on it was like, shouldn't be called American single malt. That's a European standard. And my answer to him was like, well, yeah, but what about Japan and India and everyone else outside of this European region that is doing single malt? Because they are. Are you saying that, you know, they're just jerks about it and shouldn't be able to call it that? And I think that it's a global term that embodies certain attributes. And I think that, you know, in Scotland, they're pretty strict. But here, at the very least, I'd like it to be 100% malted barley, unequivocally, one distillery, you know, no other question. I'd love to see it be pot still only, but most people don't run pot stills, so I wouldn't want to necessarily crush the category that way. I love the idea of going into new oak. I think that's an American thing, and I don't see other countries mandating that. So I kind of like towing that line. I like the idea that, you know, our whiskeys, our bourbon, our rye, our wheat whiskey, and potentially single malt whiskey has to go into charred new oak. But that being said, I do like experimenting. We've probably got like, I don't know, 20 barrels that didn't go into charred new oak that are sitting, you know, in the rack house now. I think I'd prefer charred new oak, but I like trying things. So I guess I like the broadness of that aspect of the category. And beyond that, I mean, you know, the standard things that are kind of boring, but like can't come off the still above 165, can't go into the barrel above 125, although we go into the barrel at 105. I mean, that's kind of where I want to see American single malt go. And I guess like bouncing back and forth between questions, things I want to make. I love the American single malt that we make. It really evolved out of, I mean, in all honesty, it started out as a beer I used to brew at home that, you know, a lot of super dorky homebrewers might recognize as something called Denny Kahn's Bourbon Vanilla Imperial Porter. And Denny Kahn's out there somewhere. I'm sure I owe that guy a bottle, or 12. But and then we stripped away some of the, the malts that didn't seem to be influencing it that much. We took out the Munich malt, the brown malt, the black malt, and we're left with the 4 varieties of malted barley that we use now. I forgot what I was answering with that, but experimentation in single malt. That's the single malt we make now. I think there's a lot more that could be done. Like there's a lot more with barrels and I love American single malt. I think I don't know if it's gonna be the next big thing, but it's gonna be it's my thing. I hope other people like it.
Nice. Oh, we've been hammering that for about a year or so, where everyone was saying rye, and that's in its heyday at the moment. But you see the climb and the excitement from people over the single malts when they're starting to get to a little bit deeper age right now, and what's coming out across the country. You're finding good stuff in a lot of different spots across the country, not just 1 or 2 small areas. There's what we find exciting. There's people doing great stuff all over.
Yeah, I find that, and I think that one of the hurdles that American single malt has is defining what Scotch is. I love the stuff that comes out of Scotland, but forever ago, I might have had more bottles of Scotch in my cabinet than I did bourbon, and I think the reason for that. Actually, there is no reason for that. It just happened, and it was a bad idea. I like bourbon more now, and I think it's because I like the big flavors in bourbon. I like what the heritage brands do. I like what the craft brands do. But where I say that I think we have to overcome the hurdle that is Scotch, there's a lot of delicate flavors in Scotch, and even like something out of Islay, like Ardbeg, something that like smack you in the face with flavor. That's a smoky flavor, and like I love the flavors that come from new oak, or as they would call it, virgin oak. And at Deerhammer, we put our single malt into heavy toast light char, and I think that yields a bolder flavor than a lot of the stuff that I might sip out of Scotland. I like bold flavors.
Well, like we usually like to see, it adds like the grain forward flavors is what you're pushing.
Yeah.
Is what, like, actual grain going into it and the flavor you're getting to come through at that point. And as we've seen between all the unique different grain styles that are out there, it does play a massive difference what you're putting in. I was going to say even with like your the experiment with like the chocolate and caramel malts, like 2-3% can be a huge, could play a big deal in what you're doing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I've got a few barrels that are only base malt, and they're so boring. I mean, they're like 4 years old, and they're fine. They just like I would rather sip on a 2-year version of my product that has those specialty malts as a extra, like it's like almost baking spice. It's just an accentuation. The pale malt, I don't know. Maybe it does for some. It's not enough in my opinion.
We just poured the 4 grain.
Okay, I can get there. Give me a second. Catch up here.
This is I was talking a little bit about like working within the boundaries and the confines, particularly of bourbon, which I guess in a sense, especially like a bottle and bond bourbon, does have the most confines. And what you guys just poured is our mostly 3-year with a little bit of 4-year bourbon. And this represents the more or less like the beginning of what we started doing with bourbon. And we've chosen to we went so far left of center, and I love it a lot, but I want to bring it a little closer, because when you say bourbon to someone, that means something. And I would say more so than any other category, it can be off standard profile or off a Kentucky bourbon profile. Now, again, I love this stuff, but it's every batch is drifting closer to the center intentionally, but we're not going to the center. So this is a 4 grain bourbon. It is, I always screw up this grain bill, 65% Colorado grown corn, 20% wheat, 10% oats, and the rest is specialty malt. This also goes into heavy toast, number 2 char. We say minimum 2 years, but we rarely pull a 2-year barrel. Oh, and worth noting, when we first started making bourbon and rye, we had this idea. We're like, dude, nobody's doing a smoked bourbon. Let's do that. And then after a year, we're like, this is a terrible idea. No one wants smoked bourbon. So we phased that out. But there's still like the occasional barrel that brings some slight smoky notes to it from the grain bill.
Mm.
I think Mike's getting excited over here. Every
Mhm.
sip. Yeah,
Tell him to lean in the screen. He's got to get in frame, especially if he's getting excited. Ooh.
I like that's a fun 4-grain.
it is.
Yeah, it's definitely, it's intentionally unconventional, and a lot of tasting words that we'll use are what'd you call them, like fat guy food words or something? Or,
Fat boy foods.
sometimes like it's a little goofy, but like colors or seasons are kind of fun. I always think of this as like if there was a winter bourbon, this might be it. Like for us, maybe we'll do a summer bourbon someday, but this is like reminds me of sitting outside on a cold night next to a fire.
It's like I don't know. I'm with you on that, and it's almost puts you on like a hot grain cereal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
A little bit of fruit and stuff going on in there. It's
just a nice right amount of warmth on like your tongue. Like it's not like it's just warm around the edge. Get what you're saying, like that warm cereal that's there, but it's not. There's no burn or anything like that.
Yeah. There's a little bit of cinnamon, a little bit of brown sugar, a little bit of cardamom going on with that cereal. It's damn delicious. What can you say?
Yeah. Okay, what's your favorite whiskey that you make or spirit that you make to make a cocktail with?
I think, yeah. It's funny you asked that. I just spent like the 4 hours lead up to sitting down with you guys working on cocktails for a project we're doing with this other brand, and I was using this what was it, a lemon blueberry base. So I was trying a lot of stuff, and typically I would say it would be our American single malt because one, that's kind of our hallmark. It's what we're all about. So I want to show it off. But also, like, I love to work with the baking spice notes in it. But in this case, it didn't work at all in this cocktail. It just muddied everything up. So my second in line would be our Hickory smoked corn whiskey. Because it's not the heavy, the smoke isn't like smacky in the face smoke, but it's a fun quality to play with in cocktails. It's got a nice corn sweetness, and it seems to balance really well in all things. And that was what I ended up using in the cocktail. It took me forever to formulate earlier.
But you're putting that much effort into it. It seems that like cocktails have kind of been on an uptick recently as far as being part of the industry. A lot of people were drinking stuff straight for a really long time. It seems like there's been a little bit of an uptick in cocktails recently. At least maybe for us. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, I know I personally are interested in cocktails in the last year has gone up, but I think too with the whole COVID situation, just marketing that whole cocktail to go thing, just providing something that people can buy. That's been a huge thing for a lot of distilleries. But
yeah, I think obviously the history behind cocktails, and in particular, like I think the American history in cocktails is both like fascinating and tragic with prohibition and losing so much. But what's so interesting to me about cocktails is if I sit down in a nice restaurant, I can order a glass of whiskey neat. I could order a glass of wine. And those are great things that the producer made. But if I order a cocktail and it's a great restaurant with a really good bartender, then I get to taste what they can create with all those things.
right.
I mean, that's to me part of the fun of going out. And while I certainly have cocktails at home, I'm drinking a lot more when I know that someone else is making them with intention. It's just another layer.
Yeah, and I think, and that's for me, the adventure with cocktails in the last year has been, I used to have the mindset of like, oh, cocktails are just something super sweet people want to chug down and whether they get intoxicated, whatever. But I've actually discovered it's really a whole other avenue to explore different flavors and combinations of things, and seeing how certain bitters or whatnot accent the spirit and bring out certain other notes. It's become another fun area of exploration. If you just love flavor and you love exploring things, it's not just syrupy sweet stuff that's out there. There's a lot of fantastic cocktails that really accent the different spirits and just create some wonderful flavor combinations. So
yeah, I think it's I like to think of it as like everything that I get to do as a distiller is a build. You know, it starts out with grain selection and handling throughout, and you know, the yeast and the fermentation and distillation in the barrel. All of it is a build to get to what I want to do, and it takes fucking forever. It's like a 5-year cycle to get to the end result, and a cocktail is a similar build that takes 5 minutes. So it's, you know, it's all fun and it's different things, and there's I don't know, like there's more glory in the long term, I guess. But I think cocktails are pretty rad, and I'm glad that culture is permeated through.
All right. Since you mentioned it, I'm switching over to the Hickory smoked corn whiskey here.
Yeah. You guys have the single barrel that secured by the ABV network. This is
ABV pick.
This was my favorite barrel, and I did not want to see it go, but
you didn't want him talking about you like like somebody else.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. One doesn't make whiskey to not sell it, I guess. So.
Yeah. I'm doing no glass without the rye and without this.
Okay.
So this is our Hickory smoked corn whiskey. You know, you guys know corn whiskey has to be at least 85% corn, and a lot of other rules, but it cannot be aged in charred new oak. Through my discussions with a representative TTB, it can be aged in uncharred oak, new oak, which I've never heard before, or it can be aged in used oak, which is what we do. We typically go into our ex-bourbon barrels, sometimes into our ex-single malt barrels. But our approach on this was there's not a lot of corn whiskeys out there. And of those that are out there, there's not a lot of 100% corn whiskeys. So we're using 100% Colorado-grown, non-GMO, for whatever it's worth, corn that's grown down in the Four Corners region at Ute Mountain Farm. And we cold smoke 15% of it with Hickory in a smoker that we built. It takes about 6 or 8 hours to get that smoking process done. And then we do the same sour mash, 4-day open ferment, double pot still, and then age for 3 years, although the one you're drinking is 4 years old, in used barrels. Something kind of weird about this is I would say this is more work than any other whiskey we make. And it's the lowest price point of all the whiskeys we make. We move it into various barrels over the course of its maturation. And yeah.
So I've gone through a couple bottles of this already.
Oh, nice.
But I will say it, on the nose, especially tonight, smoked ham.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just totally, even on the palate, it's from nose to palate. On the nose, I'm like, smoked ham. And I'm getting images like Canadian bacon frying in a pan. But on the palate, oh my God, this is all right. I need a side of field peas and some collard greens and stuff to go with this. Let's chow down because this is just freaking delicious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. The only bummer about this is like, I was saying that every batch is the next best, and I have yet to come out with the next. I don't know. This one's the best, so I'm still working on trying to top this one, but it might take another year or so.
Oh my God! And this is so. Have you had Brimstone?
Yeah, I do.
So,
like Brimstone a lot.
I do. I really do like Brimstone. But whereas Brimstone is just like, I'm going to smack you in the face with this, with all of the meats coming out of the smoker. This is more elegant. This is not. It's not an assault.
No, this is. I want to. would make you fat.
Yes.
It builds up into the flavors like you're actually having it, like the fat's melting in your mouth when it's going on.
Right.
I would say that like what you're sipping on, this barrel in particular was definitely a special barrel. What makes this offering challenging in general, not what you're drinking, but our general release, is that, you know, we have to contend with like some barrels that smack you in the face, some barrels that have to temper that down. And it's a very challenging blending project. And something we do here, I kind of mentioned this earlier with the port cast finish, but it's an effort to make my life easier, but also like see where things go, is a whole lot of, you know, vatting of more barrels than we need to nail the blend down. And when I say need for our immediate bottling needs, but then we'll put them back in barrels and let them sit for another 6 months or a year. So the upside is we get to revisit again, but I totally forgot where I was going with that. I guess like trying to make the right end result, you know, like blending some of those big ones that might smack you in the face. Ones. So it's a fun one.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys. You know, we're getting well into the year here. We're obviously going to have our Whiskey of the Year awards towards the end of the year. As far as a specialty whiskey, this one's just jumped right up to the front for me. I mean, holy cow! I mean, I've been through a couple of bottles of this. This is my first time getting to try it.
Yeah, it's really. I mean,
holy shit!
And
this is amazing.
My non-whiskey drinking friends have all liked it quite a bit.
Yeah. Well, is this since it is smoked? Is this going to be in the smoke show category?
I don't know. We got to. I mean, I assume we're going to have like a whiskey specialty category.
Yeah.
I would assume this would be right in.
There has to be smoked and then specialty, because then you're getting into finishes. I'm just saying there has to be more separation.
We could do that.
Right.
Same
Sorry
time.
about the internal discussion here. We'll table that for.
We kept it simple before, but I think we need to
There's
spread
a few
out.
categories we need to dive into, and this one
that and the port,
check
like
all the fucking boxes.
Yeah.
There's something coming out later this month in from Highwire Distilling that I'm intrigued as if it will taste something similar to this.
I'll go ahead and tell you it won't, Patrick, because they're releasing.
I know that son of a bitch was there too.
They're releasing it as a new make and not barrel aged, and I think that's going to make a difference.
I understand. You know what I mean.
Try it, so I know.
they took some of their mash and aged it with in Benton's Hams warehouse where they were smoking it, and had it wrapped in some of the fat. So it'll be interesting to see. Like I just want to see if a little bit of that comes through. Obviously later on, because this is, this goes into that category. It gets slotted off to the side. This and that port one too. That one was damn tasty. Not to say the other ones weren't. Don't take that the wrong way when I say that. But I'm like, there's a couple of things that have been slotted off to the side this evening from the tasting. So, wow, good job.
Have you ever had somebody else's? Well, maybe that's not a fair question, but had someone else's whiskey and you were like, "Damn it, I wish I would have done that," or they stole my idea.
Yeah, all the time. I mean. Yeah, I think like, well, to the first part, like tasting someone else's and being like, fuck, that's good. That to me is the whole like why to do this, is like just to be inspired. So as much as it like sometimes I'll taste something like, fuck you, that's so good. There's nothing better than that though, right? Yeah. Like it's I love that. Not, you know, like all of us, like I love the stuff from heritage brands. Like I was sipping on some Old Foe 1910 and with ice cream last night. It was amazing. But it's the craft brands that do things that like defy the standards, that catch my attention, and you know, like just jump out. And even what really gets me sometimes is things that are only like 2 years old that I taste. I'm like, fuck you, you just made magic. How did you do that? Because I know what my 2-year whiskey tastes like, and it's fine, but it's not there yet. God, yeah, I think I love that. But then on the latter part of your question, there's something going on. I don't know if it's mind reading, but Balcones, who was just mentioned, seems to be Deerhammer to the punch by 8 months every single time. Like every single time I think of something. before it comes out, I'm like, fuck, they did it again. But I don't care. That's okay.
Yeah.
You know, it's I love what they do. And it's been inspiring to watch their offerings. But so many things, like even like just their grain bills. I'm both inspired and impressed at how we've aligned. Although they've definitely taken a different trajectory with volume and scale. Also, I guess like because we're so single malt focused, there's Westland out of Washington does a little bit of single malt, I hear. I heard an interview, I think it was with Matt, who's I guess their head distiller, and they broke down their grain bill, and it was fucking identical to our very first grain bill. To the extent that I was like thinking to myself, I was like, I gotta hit Matt. I've never had a conversation with him. But like, dude, did you also brew Denny Con's bourbon vanilla porter and decide to make that into a whiskey without the hops and the vanilla and everything? Because it is spot on to that grain bill as from a homebrew perspective. But us and Westland start out at the same time. Our stuff tastes totally different because as it goes, and everybody knows, there's so many variables, and you can have the exact same recipe, but you're gonna end up with a different final product because of the environment, these specific grains you use and where they're grown, the fermentation, the natural flora, like everything. So I think that's kind of an interesting thing and a funny circumstance. God, what else? I don't know. Sometimes this is totally unrelated to things I make, but I had some Rolling Fork rum that Turner Wathen sent me.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Damn it, it was good. Like it was not even the same world, but and obviously like his model is more finding really great stuff in the Caribbean and beyond and putting it together. But man, it's so good. It was so good. That's the kind of thing I'm like, fuck. It makes me want to do better, and I love that.
Those are some of the best experiences when you have them. Like especially if it's not in your wheelhouse's stuff, and you sit down and you're like, "Holy shit!" Like it's a little different perspective. I think that happened with us for gin like probably a year ago. Up until that point, I'd only had some of the Pine Sol gin versions of things, and it didn't thrill me. I was not wanting to go back to that, but we've been turned on to a few that have been really kind of came around, and I'm still not on absinthe. I'm just not good with black licorice, so it's just not.
Yeah, I hear you.
Ben loves it. He'll go down that road.
You're leaving more for me, bro.
I am. I know.
Again, at Leopold's this past week, and the 3-chamber rye is amazing.
Yeah,
but I'm sitting there just drooling over his absinthe because it's freaking phenomenal, and his Amaros are pretty great too. But
yeah, I want some of that 3-chamber peach brandy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He had just finished processing the peaches for that when we got there, so yeah, that's coming up soon.
Yeah, and like, I guess on a tangent of talking about things that are like mind blowing, something I miss, although I'm sure it still happens, I just haven't partaken in a while. 2 of the craft distilling industry trade association conferences that happen every year, both of them happen to be in Louisville this year. ADI just happened and ACSA is coming up. Something I've always liked with those historically was that they had their own spirits competition. And what they would do is at the end of the night, after announcing who won, all the bottles would be out on the table, like free for pours. And there was something amazing about, like quite literally rubbing shoulders with all these other distillers from around the country who you don't even know, but then you realize, like, oh, I know who you are. I've listened to you on a podcast or seen you on, XYZ. And you're tasting their stuff and other people's stuff. And every once in a while you hit one or somebody's like, yo, that's the one right there. I miss that. I hope I'm kind of hoping that happens in Louisville at ACSA. So, yeah, I love that stuff. You guys should come out for that one.
That's the one in December, right?
Yeah. I think it is early December.
Yeah, it's right around my birthday. I can make an argument for that.
Yeah, I'm gonna road trip out for that.
All right, I'm going to the blend because we are getting towards the end of the night. We've had you on an hour and a half, and we really appreciate you being on. So I'm going to say, if anyone out there in the chat has any more questions, pop them in now because we'll get you back to the life that you got going on. Are you a kayaker or are you more of a like the big rafts? Which one's your favorite?
For sure, kayaks. I've out of principle never even got on a raft until a few years ago. I mean, they're fine. It's just like I heard a metaphor recently where a guy referred to it as like you could drive a bus or you could drive a sports car, and I'd rather drive the sports car.
I was going to ask: is it the raft or the rafters?
Yeah. No, it's just I don't. If I'm going to do something, I want to be the one doing it. I don't know. Like, I guess I could be a passenger, but no, I do like kayaking a lot. It's a lot of fun. It's there's something that I didn't realize I did it when I was younger, and I've realized as I got older. But there's something really I don't want to call it satisfying, but you kind of know what you're getting into, but not really. And you see these horizon lines, which is the river, dropping at a rate that you can't see beyond. And you kind of get up to the lip and think like, here we go. I got this, or I don't have this, but I'm going anyway. And I like that kind of as something to be a guiding principle in all things. So I think that's helped in running a distillery because whatever comes next, I'm like, fuck it, I got it. And that's almost like that's not true. I don't have it, but you don't know until you do it. So getting up to the lip and being like, here we go. I like that. There's no stopping, So yeah, kayaking. We do a lot of mountain biking out here too. There's some really fun trails. That's always good for just trying to stay in shape and not hit a tree. Smash box.
What's your favorite cocktail to sip, Emily?
Man, that's a great question. I don't think I have a favorite. I try not to I try not to have favorites, but
What's a go-to then? What's a safety cocktail?
Well, I guess I think of it as like my go-to for food. A lot of people is like a cheeseburger. My go-to is fish and chips. So my go-to at a bar would be, I guess, like a whiskey sour. And it doesn't always end up well, but that's like my barometer of sorts. But usually if I go to a spot, like it has less to do with favorite and more to do with the base spirit and what the description, sometimes the name of the cocktail. It'll not be vodka. I feel like that's a waste of sobriety. But everything else is cool. I'm good with like agave and rum for sure, gin. Yeah.
Nice. Do you still mess around with 15-gallon stills for fun or prototyping at all?
No, I should, but I gave it away. I gave my still away to a friend so they could distill at home. Okay. I do. God, it's like about 4 feet from me. I've got the not really column, but like the head of what would be a 55-gallon still, but I took it apart. I would like to find a new 55-gallon boiler for it so I can do like some super small stuff. And I was talking to one of my guys in production about, firing off some experiments that way. And then we've got a super tiny little like bench still that we use that will sometimes like infuse things into, our corn whiskey and then redistill it and see what it tastes like. So that's kind of fun to mess around with. It takes 1 hour and you can have a new experimental distillate of new make. So it's kind of fun.
Going back, do fish and chips have malt vinegar?
Of course.
Of course. That's
malt vinegar. Lots of malt vinegar.
And I feel like this. I don't know, but do you have a favorite Yelp review about your distillery? I don't know anything about it, but I feel like he might know. I feel like Tim knows and may have this, but I don't know. So this might be one of those things you can say pass on.
No, exact opposite of that. So like, I think like we get a lot of Yelp reviews because we're a distillery, but we also have this like bolt-on hospitality component that we call our tasting room, but to everyone else, it's a bar. You know, like it's the front of our distillery and we serve cocktails. And I think because we historically have not served food out of our place, we escape a lot of the bad reviews that food, like restaurants get. Because if you like, I don't know, like if your food was garnished wrong, you'll get a bad review, I guess. But we got a couple bad reviews, which I kind of cherished. One that we had a long time ago and we still talk about was, I forgot the guy's name, but he referred to our Wisconsin Old Fashioned, whatever it was, one of our cocktails as the worst he's ever had. Wisconsin? Yeah, Wisconsin. They use brandy in their Old Fashions. And they muddle cherries and oranges in there. And I forgot why he didn't like it, but he said it was the worst one he ever had and gave us 1 star. So we put up, like, we have one of those A-frames outside, and we'll write, like, whatever things we think are witty that day. And for a while, one of our guys wrote, come try the worst Wisconsin Old Fashioned you've ever had, according to, I forgot his name, but that was a good 1-star Yelp review. And then we got another one this past winter. We actually got like 4 in a row, all from the same group. God, this is a long story, but like the short of it was, they came in and it was cold out. We weren't serving people inside because we couldn't. So we had fire rings outside of the distillery, and we would set up little campfires for everyone. And one of our bartenders started a campfire for them, and then they came back in and asked her if she could move it or start a new campfire someone else, because they didn't want to be as close, which was like 8 feet away, to another group. And our bartender, she's kind of cunty, like she didn't want to start a new campfire for them, and they took issue with that and went on a tirade about how wrong she was. But then while they were doing that, a bartender and her friends from down the street at another establishment saw what she was doing and told them that they should go fuck themselves, and he was about to come over and kick them in the nuts. And they wrote this in a Yelp review. So I responded back. I was just like, I'm so sorry you had a bad experience. We're doing our best. You might have a better experience at one of the other establishments. Oh, that's right. There are no other establishments in town. Everywhere else is closed. We're the only ones trying to be open. And they shut up real quick and apologized and redacted their 1-star reviews. So, yeah, I mean, I typically enjoy 1-star reviews, I guess, because they're never all that valid. Like one time, there was one other one where a guy referred to one of our bartenders as what they call it, smug, and it wasn't me, but it could have been. And I was like, they're not wrong. He is smug, and fuck you.
That should be a shirt for the bartender, right?
Yeah. Smug and fuck you. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, even the blend was really, really good. Like the whole lineup of stuff was fantastic.
Yeah.
Lenny.
Thank you.
I did do 2 blends. I did one without the rye and the hickory smoked corn, just because I wanted to try to see with what I was to myself like the more elegant of the offerings. Not that anything was less elegant by any means.
Right.
But I have to say that the blend of everything together, I really like it a lot. It's a nice trip.
The infinity glass. Yeah, man, it's fun. It's I consider myself pretty fortunate that I get to play in this space of so many crazy talented craft distillers and distilleries. I mean, the same thing now holds true over 10 years ago when I thought it was a good idea to start a distillery, which was like, there's a lot of room to imprint one's own style on these existing styles. And there's a lot of guys doing amazing things. And I don't know, I'm trying to do my best. You know, sometimes it doesn't work. You know, we've got some barrels that have been sitting around forever because it didn't work, but I try to put out what works.
It's quite tasty. Now, since you only produce like part of the year, are you open year round in the tasting room?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're open year round. I mean, that's another part
or whatever that is now.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we're open 7 days a week, pretty much. I mean, we're closed tomorrow and the next day. because we're going to Denver to hang out at other people's places and drink whiskey. That has nothing to do with a labor shortage. We just feel like taking a break. Yeah, we're always open, and like that's another reason why we don't produce in the summer is so we would typically make American single malt because it requires less cooling energy than because you do your saccharification rest at 150 Fahrenheit versus bringing corn up to like out here 190 Fahrenheit. So it requires less cooling energy. Anyway, so single malt, because we and most places that make single malt louder or let the wash, which is this, the sugar water solution, rinse through the grain, then we have to shovel out the grain, and our restrooms are right behind where we shovel the grain out of the mash tun. So as we're sitting there with this rake pulling it out, and the handle is like going within like 1 foot of the door, people are trying to walk by, and wrong way of saying it. It sucks if you're trying to go to the bathroom or raking out the mash tun. So that's why another reason why we don't produce summer, but we're open all the time. So yeah, more long-winded answers.
You could have gone as deep as you wanted to with that. We're always happy for that extra little bit.
Yeah.
So
yeah, tasting room's always open though. So yeah, I would encourage anyone vacationing out to Colorado to come out here. Not for sure, not just because of Deerhammer, but the summers in Buena Vista are pretty amazing. We're surrounded by 14,000 foot mountains and the Arkansas River and great trails, fun mountain biking, fun kayaking, rafting, all that. And there's some great distilleries around here. Like, I love Deerhammer, but 30 minutes down the road, you get to Woods High Mountain Distillery, which does some awesome stuff. You can go over Cottonwood Pass and end up at Montana Distillery in Crested Butte that makes rum. You can go over another pass and end up at Breckenridge Distillery that, they make some stuff. Snitching Lady Distillery is just down the road. They make some awesome corn whiskey. We've got a lot of distilleries out here, and I don't know. I don't think that should be one's only. Well, maybe it should be one's only reason for coming to Colorado, but there's a lot of good stuff out here.
We were talking before the show that there is a planned trip at some point going to happen, just because it is a whiskey destination, or at least it should be looked at that way, because there are a lot of different places to go to, and you guys are producing some fantastic stuff. Especially what we had here tonight. It's not very frequent that we get to go through stuff and set one, maybe two things aside as we're tasting it with people. That's pretty exciting. I mean, people have great stuff, but it's not like this goes into this whiskey of the year category this evening when you're having it. So kudos to you on that. We really appreciate you coming out and being on the show this evening. Before we go though, our friend Ben is in another show. He has another show that's going on. It's the Bourbon Turntable. And when is your next show dropping? And give people a little background on what the show there, Ben.
So
Benji, sorry.
Yeah,
Benji's right, because he's been like crossing the country, all lost. He can't find a home. He's been all over the place the last.
I don't know where I am. I don't know what time it is. I don't know the date. But so Bourbon Turntable is a show that Kevin Rose started up. Myself and Drew Crawley get to work with him on that. Basically, we're focusing on discussing whiskey, but also discussing music. So we're going to really dive into some different musical topics. It's a fun concept, and it's been really fun recording that. So the first show will drop this Wednesday on the 8th on YouTube, and we're discussing our favorite albums from different decades. So kind of a fun topic. It was a hard topic to pick because you look at different decades, different generations of music, and try to pick a favorite album, a personal favorite from that. Really hard to do. So again, was a really fun topic, and we've got a lot more stuff in the works. So everything from first albums to first concerts, and then we're going to be really starting to deep dive particular artists and albums and songs, and we're going to cover a broad genre of music. Which was cool because just this week being in Colorado, I got to go visit Red Rocks and kind of see the music museum they have there. Some just incredible shows. And out of all the places I've ever visited, I can't think of a more fantastic place to take in a show than Red Rocks.
Yeah.
That place is phenomenal. So
it is fantastic.
It's going to be a lot of fun. I think one of the cool aspects of it is we've got the three of us, you got three different generations. So completely different perspectives on music. And then Drew is a professional musician who was just in Nashville this week recording his first album. So congrats to him for that. And I wanted to throw out before we leave, a friend of ours from the Whiskey Tribe, Dustin Patterson, had a working accident, got pretty messed up there, and we hope for a speedy recovery and quick healing for you, buddy. So
yeah, that was not a good look. Hope you do get past that quick. But Lenny, thank you so much for being on the show tonight. It was fantastic talking to you. I think anyone who has watched the show is going to make it a stop on their tour when they do go through, or at least you should, and hunt out some of the stuff. We're hitting my favorite time of the year, that allocation season of horseshit.
And you're one of the people standing in line.
Yeah, you're all looking for the wrong stuff if you're doing Corey, start searching out stuff like this. Start searching out Deerhammer and other stuff. You will not regret what you're getting, and it's going to be a much better experience than that. Let's just be honest. Sorry, if we get in trouble saying it, we don't give a fuck. So too bad.
It's worth more of your time and a much greater reward to search for stuff like this than it is to go stand in line next to some guy who hasn't showered for 2 days,
right,
to maybe get a chance to get something and spend too much money for it. This is way better.
Some jerk that drove all the way from Louisiana and should have been bagging coffees for Stave and Bean.
Yeah.
You probably should have, but some of these have just been absolutely fantastic. I can't wait to stop out there and taste some of the other stuff you have going on, because this has all been really, really great, Lenny. Really appreciate you coming on. And so remember, it's not the size of the den that matters; it's the love of whiskey. Cheers, everyone out there.
Cheers.
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 Let's get into it. 1, 2, 3. Let's get the smoke.